would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California. Member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Today's Thursday, October 13th, 2016. There may be a light at the end of the tunnel, folks. We'll talk about that first thing in today's show. Before we do, head on over to therebelbroker.com. There you will find an option to get in contact with me. Send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions that you might have. Happy to reply. If you prefer to email me directly, you can send those to therebel@therebelbroker.com. While you're there, why not participate in the audience demographic survey? I'll tell you why. Because you'll be put in the drawing for a $50 gift certificate to Amazon.com. And you'll also be helping the show. So everybody wins. And who doesn't want to win? Just click that button at the very tippy top of the page. Take the survey to support the show at therebelbroker.com. And then all you have to do is fill out the survey, answer the initial questions. Both times you're asked what your email address is, use the same email address. And as long as the email addresses match, you will be entered into the drawing, which will take place on the very first show that happens in the month of November. Not 100% sure what day of the week that is. But, you know, whatever day is first in November that'll be a show on, we'll do the drawing. So we already did one for October on October 1st, picked a winner. So there you go. It really happens. All right, folks. The other way to sort of get more into the nitty-gritty and depths, if you will, is to become a member of the Rebel Underground. The best way to do that is to text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. That's text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. And you'll get sort of a behind the mic / inside scoop / first shot at what's coming up in terms of free stuff that I'll be offering, in terms of new offerings, in terms of new ways to get access to helpful information. That'll all be provided to the folks in the Rebel Underground first. So that's a great place to participate in that. One more time, text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. And you'll be all set to go. Just follow the prompts once you do that, and you'll become a member of the Rebel Underground. I hope y'all are having a great week. I had a variety of different topics I wanted to potentially talk about today. And I think at sort of the last minute, I came down on one relating to the housing market in the Northwest, because I think it dovetails in nicely with what we've already talked about in the Northeast, if specifically in Manhattan, where we've seen a pretty interesting reversal in the marketplace, where there's more inventory now coming up. Inventory is up from last year. So that's a very interesting thing, and folks are talking about how that's having an effect on the marketplace. And what's also interesting is the articles that sort of point to a relative collapse of the luxury market that's sort of fueling it, which I think is kind of interesting. I'm just trying to get into the gears of how that works. When you see the luxury market softening, I guess what that means is that those properties that are sort of at the bottom end of the luxury market perhaps have to go through an adjustment in list price to get sold. So they end up reducing the price enough to start appealing to folks that may not, where they're probably not specifically categorized as luxury market. But then again, when we were talking about averages of $2 million in Manhattan for units, it's hard to not use the word luxury rather liberally on the island of Manhattan anyway. The other aspect was a discussion, and maybe we'll talk about this one too. The article I ended up coming down on may not be a full show, but Lord knows I've said that before and ended up talking an awful lot about something I thought would only take a few minutes. But the other thing was I had an interesting email from someone that really got me thinking on this subject, and that was, when are you too old to start investing in real estate? Is there a too young and is there a too old? And you know what? I wanted to stop and think about that, because the reality is that I really don't think there is a too old. It really depends on your personality and what you want to do. And then I actually realized, you know what? There may actually be a huge advantage to starting late. Now, of course, I think all of us would love to have the foresight and the ability and the fortitude to start this process young. I feel a bit like a boob for not having done it when I was younger, particularly because I had several opportunities to really get in on some great deals right when I got into the business. I mean, that first 2 years, I was lucky enough to sort of cross paths with some folks who have done exceptionally well in investing in real estate, folks who are really kind of aggressive and really kind of looking at the marketplace and seeing it as nothing but full of opportunity. This is going all the way back to 1989. So my very first year, for those of you who don't remember, on October 17th, 1989, we had the great earthquake in Silicon Valley. It was either 5:04 p.m. or 6:04 p.m. I can't remember. I think was it 6:04? Anyway, I was sitting in a basement classroom at San Jose State University, the School of Education, about to take a midterm when the earthquake hit. But I was also a real estate agent. This was my year after graduating from college, and I was actually doing graduate work. And went out to go watch the World Series at the student pub. Lights were still on the campus at San Jose State. Got to watch video of Candlestick Park being evacuated and collapsed freeways. And finally, we went to the roof of one of the buildings, and we were one of the few places with electricity. We had electricity. The hospital down the way had electricity. The police department had electricity, but it was dark when we got onto the roof of that building and could just look out and see. And there were a few places where it looked like there were a couple of fires burning. But in any event, the reason why I even bring that up is because after that, and you can decide for yourselves how you feel about this kind of stuff. But right after that, there was a decent period of time where folks were like, all right, I'm out. California earthquakes, I've had enough of them. And particularly in areas like Los Gatos, which even then were extremely lucrative communities, you had several older homes that had slipped off of their foundation as a result of the earthquake. And so I had several very aggressive real estate friends of mine, who had gotten into the business sort of at the same time I did, maybe a little bit earlier. And they went and ended up buying 3 or 4 different homes in Los Gatos that had been shifted off of their foundations for ridiculous discounts in those first few months after the earthquake. And if I'm remembering at the time, on average, I think they ended up paying $10,000 to get the homes put back on their foundations and get everything fixed. But they had gotten these properties at ridiculous discounts. I mean, in other words, on October 16th, say they would have sold for $400,000, and then on October 18th, they were selling for $250,000. I mean, it was ridiculous, the discounts that these folks were able to get on these properties. And I was invited to join in. It was, and these were not, let me make sure to be clear, these were not folks these were folks that were my age, early 20s. None of them had tons of capital laying around. But they pooled together and ended up buying these properties and did exceptionally well for themselves. I know I still occasionally get word on what's happening with one of them, and that's how he started his entire investment life. He was doing real estate as a real estate agent. After that, and that was only his second year, I think, and he stopped doing it after that because he was able to get enough properties where that first one where he bought it with a bunch of folks, and I think he actually ended up doing 2, literally built the empire he now has in terms of being an investor. And that story just jumped into my mind when I got this email from a listener who is we had a conversation. We were talking about different things and options that they had. So I'm guessing this gentleman was probably just turned 60 or was maybe 61 and was sort of in the same, I lament that moment of my life of having been invited into joining in with these other 4 or 5 agents or other 4 or 5 people to do this and then not doing it. And I could have at the time and then not doing it. And it's one of those moments where if I had just run the numbers, it would have made absolute sense. If I had just analyzed it the way I've suggested all of you should analyze this stuff, absolutely would have made sense to do. So yeah, it's one of those. I'm sure we all have those moments, right, where we occasionally might have a nightmare. I don't know. I'm an older dude, right? I'm 50 something. I still have nightmares about forgetting that I have a final in college, and I wake up at a start wondering where my backpack is and thinking, oh God, I got to find my chemistry book and start studying for my test. How does that happen? Anyway, sorry, again, I'm going into the weeds. But at any rate, and I have that same damn nightmare about this missed opportunity that I missed out on back when freaking Reagan was still in the White House and I was 20-something years old. And I'm sure we've all got them. Those things, those decisions we've made that haunt us. I'm not sure that's a bad thing. I think that serves as a reminder that when you brush up against an opportunity again or a similar situation that you just horribly regret later in life, that it maybe ends up being a signpost for you to reconsider what you're about to do so that you don't make that same mistake again. Sadly, I have not yet encountered such an obvious opportunity where passing it up would be more. Well, okay, that's not true. I guess my Hawaii property, where I didn't pass up the opportunity. So yay for me. There we go. Happy end of the story. I did learn my lesson from that first one. But anyway, trying to get back to the point. Sorry, I've had one of those days. Lots of caffeine today, by the way. So that might be one of the problems. So I got to thinking, what would be the reasons to be afraid if you're older? Now, younger, clearly, we all think we've got we're all of us are never going to die. We're immortal. We're going to be vigorous and agile and it won't ever hurt when we stand up when we're that age. We're indestructible, right? But I actually think that there is a window of time that just blows the doors off in terms of opportunities for folks who are older. Now, if I'm not mistaken, once you turn 59 and a half, I think that's the magic number, you can pull money out of your retirement account without a penalty. Now, as it is, you end up paying taxes, right? If you do it before then, you have to pay a huge chunk of money in taxes. I know this because in order for me to take advantage of some real estate opportunities over the last few years, I've had to do that. I've had to take some money out of that account because I needed to be liquid fast. So I had to take it out and suffer the consequences. And when I did the math, despite the fact I'd be paying this ridiculous chunk of change in taxes, the return on the potential investment was good enough to make me not cry about that. So I did it. Still don't regret it. It was absolutely the right move. But again, I did the math, right? I didn't just do it on a whim. I didn't follow my emotions on that. I let the math tell me whether or not it made sense. But what's great is when you hit 59 and a half, you can take that money out without that penalty, which, when you think about it, is a ridiculously awesome opportunity for you. So not only would I suggest that being older is not a detriment, it's a ridiculous awesome opportunity, particularly when there are so many indicators that a lot of the things that you're currently investing in aren't making you money. Now, in my case, I think I've mentioned this story before, but when I got divorced and we were shuffling money around, I had a pretty good chunk of change that I had moved over to what was going to be my financial account, and decided not to invest it in anything, decided to leave it as cash in the account because I had no faith that any of the investments that were being offered were actually going to make money over the next year. I was ridiculously pessimistic. I was far more pessimistic in my own actions than I was in the show. I mean, I was suggesting caution in the show, but I was kind of putting my money where my mouth was, even more so back then. And it ended up being a huge boon that I did that because the other money that had already been with that company was obviously left in the investment instruments that it was originally in. And all of those lost money. All of those lost anywhere from, 0.5% to, I think the worst case one was like a 5% loss. Well, that money I left as cash lost nothing. It's just the same amount of cash come the end of the day. So what do you want your money to do for you? Now, on this show, we never talk about losing money. We talk about doing the math up front so that you can guarantee yourself as much as possible that you're going to get a return on your investment. And so if you're just saying to yourself, well, you know what, I at least want to get 5%. I think that's entirely reasonable. And by doing reasonable math, you can accomplish that. No, I don't think there's any question of it. I've run through the numbers enough times, either in real investments I've gotten involved in, or in just running the numbers to run the numbers and then tracking to see what would have happened if I'd done it. So then you have to make the decision of, all right, okay, so here's money that I have in this thing. Maybe I've been putting money into this my entire professional life, whatever company you're working for, or if it's something you're maintaining on your own as a 401k. You've got all this money accumulated. Here you are where you feel like you kind of really missed the boat, perhaps, on real estate. And I don't think you do. I think every 10 years you can look back and say, well, I really missed the boat. And I really don't think that if you were to jump into the market now and decide to be a landlord, I don't think you're 10 years from now, you're going to look back and regret that. Will you look back and think, gosh, if I'd waited a year or 2 years, I could have made it X percent more lucrative? Maybe. I think that's a real possibility. But I really don't think there's a quote unquote bad time unless you've got just obviously horrendous things going on. And I think the horrendous things going on were pretty obvious in 2004 and 2005. And that's speaking as a guy who did buy in 2004. But having the ability to hold on and push through the downtime, I still ended up doing very well, despite the fact that prices were kind of ridiculously high. But anyway, the point being that you can get your hands on that money and not have to pay that penalty once you get 50 to 59 and a half. So suddenly you can take that $30, $40, $50,000, whatever amount you want to come up with, put that down on a property and guarantee yourself not only positive cash flow, but I'm sure if you do a return on investment, if you take that $20,000 to $50,000, whatever amount you're doing, and you do the math on it and figure out if I had taken that money and I wanted to make X amount per year on it and figure out what that percentage is that makes you happy, whether it's 5% or 10%, whatever it is, that you'll find that money is probably going to make you more than whatever you've got it invested in. And here's the other thing. No matter how much math you do on the front end of an investment into a stock or anything else, or a group of stocks, I think that you are approaching that decision with a lower level of certainty than you are if you do the kind of math we've talked about on this show in terms of evaluating a real estate investment. Now, are there variables? Absolutely. Are there variables that you may not be able to anticipate? Sure. But by and large, you're not going to probably see huge dumps in the local marketplace. And even if you do, the last time we had a huge dump, rentals didn't suffer. In fact, in my area, rentals went up simply because we had all these people who suddenly had to back out of their commitments on a mortgage and had to still have a place to live. So we ended up with tons of rentals. So I think right now there is no, I'm too old for this. In fact, I think I'm old. My age is now going to be a huge advantage to me because I'm going to get access to a financial resource that I can make use of to secure a monthly income through rentals. Some of you may even have enough money saved up to purchase properties outright and have it be 100% return on investment for you. I mean, of course, you have to take out things like taxes and insurance and all those other wonderful things. But that can be a great cash flow for you. Now, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't take all your money out of your retirement account. I'd leave some of it in there. But the point is that this is a opportunity. Age is not something that should hold you back. Age presents you with a unique opportunity that folks like me can't take advantage of. Now, I'm no young dude, being in my low 50s, but I'm still jumping in and doing it, even though this stuff doesn't show an advantage for me. But I'll tell you what, if I'm still in purchase mode when I hit 59 and a half, I'll absolutely be leveraging more off of that money. and it'll just simply because I have seen too much in terms of tracking my investments that are going into a 401k versus what I make on the real estate I invest in. And as long as I'm willing to do the work that's needed to be a landlord, I don't see any reason why I'd want to leave that money in the hands of someone else and then pay them to invest it in stuff that I can't mathematically anticipate as well as I can real estate. So I think that's the answer. I think the answer is there is no age where you need to say, well, I just missed the boat. I didn't get it there because now I need this liquidity there because I need to be able to draw off of that money to support myself. Well, I don't think that's true. Take a look at what your investments are doing. If your investments are making you 10, 15%, great. And if it's done that consistently, more power to you. Why would you ever want to pull out of that? But if not, if you want something that can make you that kind of money in some markets, if you're doing the process right, but then you also want to potentially have a physical asset in case the money part runs out, real estate's a great option for you. So don't discount it. Don't put it aside and say, well, I'm not going to do it because I'm too old. I don't think age is a thing. Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and do a quick chat about what's going on in the Northwest right after this. We're going to take a quick break, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner-broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We just spent a little time waxing philosophic on whether or not you're too old to get into the real estate investment game. And we came down to the conclusion, no, you're not. It's just a question of what you're willing to take on. And even if you're not willing to take on a lot of the nitty-gritty of being a landlord, while I wouldn't recommend it for a vacation property, my personal experience has shown that using a property management firm for a vacation property is not good. You can check previous shows for the details on that. I'm pretty sure that was an entire show. But my personal experience, and I've actually had the luxury of getting a one-to-one comparison. Exact same property, exact same physical property. Parents handed off the property to a property management person, got nearly zero vacation rentals out of it. I took it over. I buy them out. I manage the getting of the guests myself, taking the money from the guests myself, all of that stuff. My unit rents more than everyone else's. No magic here. I'm not waving a magic wand. I'm not slathering on, as much as I'd love to say it's true, I'm not slathering on some unique, only available to the Rebel Broker mojo here. I'm just doing the job that the property management firm should be doing. And there's a whole show about why this is true. So go ahead and check that out. Do a quick search on my old shows. I'm almost certain that if you do a search on property management, it'll be a show that shows up. I think I did the show about 2 months ago, which really kind of lays it out. And I think it gives a compelling argument for why you absolutely at least need to own the part of your vacation rental where you find the renters. If you want to have any hope for success. So it makes the difference between success and failure. Absolutely, no question in my mind. Okay. Sorry. But if it's a long-term rental, I think property management works just fine for you. So if you want to be more hands-off, that's absolutely an option for you. And you'd probably want to do, I know as a retirement option, I'd prefer to do long-term rentals just because it's less stress. Okay, so let's jump in here. The Northwest housing activity slowdown shows more balanced market. That's from Housing Wire. And they share some interesting numbers. And remember, I want you to think about this in the context of other areas where we've seen slowdowns. We've been trying to identify that canary in the coal mine, that leading indicator that might tell us we're seeing a more balanced market coming around the corner. Now, unfortunately, I think we also have to recognize the realities of where we live. And that's different for all of us, right? I happen to live in Silicon Valley. You may live in Omaha or wherever. And I think part of the realities of these different areas is how much construction is going on. Now, we can talk about national numbers, but nothing is more important than the numbers that actually pertain to the area you're in. So that's what you need to focus on. If you're not seeing a lot of new construction going on, or at least seeing a lot of folks moving in to sell their homes, moving into sale mode, well, then that's going to be a different thing for you. Here in Silicon Valley, we've got this bizarre, what I consider to be a relatively artificial depression in the amount of construction that's going on, primarily because of the level of regulation and taxation that is just laid on top of property development or building here, that it really, when they do build, it forces builders to sort of go for a more luxury market to try to boost their margins because they're having to pay all these other fees, and sometimes just what feels like down and out just bribes, frankly, or not even bribes. Bribery is not the right word. Extortion, I guess would be a better word, to a lot of communities where they simply say, this isn't for any stuff. You've already paid fees to pay for roads. You've already paid for fees to bring in electricity and sewer and everything else. This is simply money we just want because we know you're going to make money, and they just make them pay $100,000 per house. And we've talked about articles relating to that in Southern California before. So make sure to take in the local truth of your area with this data. But when we mix this with what we saw in Manhattan in the data that we looked at either last week or the week before, this is giving a vibration of softening in the market. So let's go ahead and look at some of the numbers. Let's see. It's still a seller's market in the Northwest, but some signs, according to this article, seem to be pointing towards a shift to a more balanced market, according to a report from Northwest Multiple Listing Service. From last year, the volumes of new listings increased 14.5%. That's pretty impressive. Pending sales increased 9.3%. So new listings, 14.5%. Pending sales increased 9.3%. Closed sales increased 9.5%, and prices increased 9% in September. Inventory for single-family homes and condominiums across the 23 counties in the report dropped about 8% from last year. Let's see. While new listings increased by 1,275 more than last year to 10,047 new listings, pending home sales for single-family homes and condos still outnumbered the new listings. But it's moving that needle away from just solid seller. And always that's the first step, right? There's always a first step when a market shifts. And we have to try and recognize where that pivot point is. We've talked about pivot points in the show before. These are things where you start to see instances that start to broaden out from being less regional. You'll usually start to see them in regional areas that are a little bit more influential. And areas I consider to be influential would be part of this Northwest stuff, but also areas like Phoenix. And for whatever reason, a lot of people look to Las Vegas. I think that's a valid one to look to in terms of a bellwether of things that are going on. But I also think when you start to see softening in some of the high-end markets, those markets that are the top 2 or 3 in terms of just demand and price and growth and all this other stuff, when you start to see the softening there, I think that's an interesting note, right? And one of our first little indicators was when San Francisco saw an actual drop in sales. You started to see that communities outside of San Francisco started to see a little bit of growth. So still the same level of interest on the part of buyers, but they'd reached this point where they said, screw it, I'm not going to pay what you want me to pay in San Francisco, which was a good sign, we thought, right? At the time that number came out, or that data came out, it indicated that sort of the buying public had enough. They had reached the point where they said, buying for prices higher than this makes no sense. So they left the market. They just said, I'm taking my ball. I'm going home. I'm not going to pay these prices. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to add 20 minutes to my commute. I'm going to add 30 minutes to my commute. I'm going to add an hour to my commute. Hell, we talked about Hollister seeing a jump, and talk about a mushroom cloud related change. Hollister's crazy out there, and everybody, the big boost in sales that's happening in Hollister, and in terms of the rentals that are, and this aren't folks who are even buying in Hollister. Remember, Hollister was one of those places in the numbers we covered earlier this week that indicated huge growth in rental rates. And these are, a lot of these folks are commuting all the way to San Jose. That's an hour and 40 minutes one way. That is nuts. So there you go. I mean, that's shows you how far out people are willing to go to cut the prices on what they're paying. Okay. Quote, because of the modest increase in the number of new listings and the slowing pace of sales and prices, the folks at Windermere Real Estate said that the market could be slowly beginning to rebalance. Quote, the increase in listings is pretty unusual given that the numbers of listings usually declines between August and September. They went on to say, considering how desperate we are for inventory, I hope this trend continues as we head further into the fall months. Now, that's one reason why I thought this was a particularly sexy bit of data, because that's absolutely the truth. This is the season's quote unquote over. If you go with your classic estimations of what a season is, we should be heading out of it. We should be seeing declining listings, and instead we're seeing increased listings. I think that is amazing because it means you're overcoming a normal instinct for this time of year. When we start to get into these months, folks are thinking, you know what, we've got Thanksgiving coming up, we got Christmas coming up, we're going to be heading into the holiday season. If folks are going onto the market now, what are they thinking? It seems to me they're thinking, you know what, we're kind of at a peak. Maybe we need to accelerate our plans to get our property sold because we want to get the highest amount possible. And folks are anticipating that there's a market ahead that's going to soften for them. So I think that that's kind of revealing, and more revealing in more than just the numbers that we're seeing related to past years and past seasonal changes, but kind of an interesting window into the mindset of the folks who are listing at this higher level than they have previously. Let's see. MLS Director Frank Wilson said one area, Kitsap County, near the Seattle area, is moving into the fall cycle, evidenced in part by slowdowns in listings and sales when compared to mid-year activity. He also reported fewer people at open houses and fewer multiple offer situations. We are still heavily weighted to a seller's market, but a small shift might be telling. I'd go a step further here because I think if clearly sellers have decided we want to get into the marketplace. But what about buyers? Are they in that same mode? Now, if you see an increase in the number of listings and potentially a decrease in the number of buyers, now here in my area, weather absolutely plays a bigger part. We aren't used to rain and snow and excruciating cold. So oftentimes you'll find that we can have a rather robust wintertime, but it's unusual. My feeling is that folks in Seattle, they're kind of already used to it, right? With all the rain and everything else that they get, that maybe the seasonal part of it, in terms of us going into winter, plays less of a part. So maybe buyers don't dwindle off as much as they do in some other areas. But what's interesting to note here is, will the number of buyers increase at a commensurate level to the increase in listings? Now, if it doesn't, if that equals fewer buyers per home for sale, that spells an opportunity for buyers. That means you don't have to come in at a crazy amount above listing price. Now, and that means to me, if you as a buyer are looking to invest in a place like Seattle, now is the time to jump on listings as soon as they come onto the marketplace. Go in there and be aggressive. Be willing to make 6 offers a week, sight unseen, and do your inspection after you've gotten your offer do your inspection after you've gotten your offer accepted. Now, we talked about that a few shows back because I think this might be an opportunity for you that may not be long-lived. Now, it'll be interesting to see what happens as we come out of winter. But as I've said before, I think in most marketplaces, this winter could be a unique opportunity for buyers. When you see data like this, it clearly tells me that this may be a good window for folks in Seattle. So if that's a place that you're interested in buying, if Seattle interests you at all, I'd strongly suggest that you focus your attention on that area. Get yourself involved with a real estate agent who can give you an automated search that's running for you regularly. And if you're uncomfortable, just ride the data for a month. just keep an eye on the listings that are showing up and see how long it takes them to go off the marketplace. And I'm sure probably in whatever system they'll hook you up with, you'll have a way to favorite different properties or show an interest in them by indicating different categories that you want to put them into, and have conversations with your agent. Say, you know what, I just noticed that this property disappeared from my search. Normally in a search, the home that you're interested in, if you've liked it or favorited it or whatever, will disappear once it goes pending. Ask your agent, hey, you know what, here's one I was looking at for a while, but it disappeared. What's the status? And he'll tell you it's pending. He may be able to find out more information about it. Don't bet on it, but at least you'll be able to find out what's going on, and you could perhaps at least figure out when close of escrow is supposed to be and figure out what it's sold for. Now, that's a cautious way to go. My suggestion would be do that, but then at the same time, be willing to just pump offers out. If a home lists for $400,000 and it's one that sounds good to you and seems to have all the features you want, and it's in a neighborhood that you've already considered and you like it, go ahead and write an offer up for it. But be aggressive. And just write it with the condition that you'll inspect it upon acceptance of the offer. Or just be aggressive and get yourself in that house to see it as soon as possible. If that sucker comes on the market and you like it, make an appointment with your agent to see it that day or the next day at the latest. But be willing to move fast. I think this is a window that may, in some areas, may persist, and we may see it push into next year right out of winter and have it be a slower year. In some areas, that might not be the case. We might see things start to heat back up again. And remember, last year, we saw them heat back up. Well, early this year, we saw things heat back up earlier. We saw things heat back up in March and February in some cases, in some locations. So keep that in mind as well. You don't want to miss the opportunity if you're absolutely in the market to purchase something. Well, I hope that was useful for you. As always, I am truly appreciative of you spending your valuable time with me each and every day. And I hope that I bring enough value to make it worth it for you. Please take a couple of minutes out to visit me at the website, therebelbroker.com, if you'd like to communicate with me or participate in the survey and take a chance to win that $50 Amazon gift card. And as always, if you could take an extra minute out and write a review or whatever tool you use to consume the show, give us a like or a thumbs up or some stars, whatever, please do that. It absolutely helps the show and helps me reach my goal of growing it and reaching more people every week. Thanks again for listening, everybody. I'll talk to y'all next time.